Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome back to my channel, The Value Creation Playbook. I am Raja Mukherjee, and in this episode 38 of our leadership series, The Value Creation Playbook. Today, we are talking about something that sits at the intersection of strategy, operations, and if you are completely being honest, a fair amount of corporate wishful thinking. We are talking about global capability centers, GCCs. And specifically, we are talking about why so many of them fail to deliver what was promised. Not because the concept is flawed. The concept is actually excellent, but because of the very specific illusions that most leaders carry into the setup. And that quietly costs them 2 years and a great deal of money before anyone figures out what went wrong. Stick with me for the entire duration of this video. And by the end of this, I promise you will have a very clear picture of the illusions to avoid and the 7 decisions that actually determine whether your GCC succeeds or doesn't succeed. Before we get to the illusions, let me be precise about what a GCC actually is, because a lot of confusion actually starts from here. A GCC is not an outsourced vendor. When you outsource, the vendor owns the talent, the process, and the risk. You manage the output. You do not manage the operation. You also do not own the team. And critically, when it goes wrong, you call the vendor. A GCC is not a headcount play. It is not a cheaper version of your existing team sitting in a different time zone. The framing is how leaders end up with a cost center instead of a capability center. What a GCC actually is this. It is a permanent extension of your operating model. It requires governance, it requires culture, it requires a leadership pipeline. And here is the line I want you to remember. If you build it wrong, you own that too. This is the contract you can exit. This is the division. And the moment you start treating it like one, strategically, structurally, and culturally, your probability of success increases dramatically. Let me start with the proposition that gets most CEOs in the room. A GCC offers substantial cost saving, sometimes to the tune of 30 to 50%. Access to deep qualified talent in market where your competitor ratios do not apply. The ability to run operations 24 hours a day, and a permanent capability platform that grows with your business. It's a very compelling business case. And I want to be very clear. This is a true case. I have seen and done tons of such cases. When GCCs work, they are genuinely transformative. The problem is the reality that tends to show up after 6 months. 80% GCCs hit serious operational problems in the first year. The average delay from setup to value realization is 14 to 18 months. And when you look at the pattern of why, it is almost never the strategy that failed. It is the assumptions around it. The problem is not the idea. The problem is the illusions. So let us talk about the 5 illusions. Each one costs 3 to 6 months together, and this is not a hyperbole. Together they cost you around 2 years. That is 2 years of delayed value, frustrated leadership teams, and a GCC that never quite becomes what it is supposed to be. Illusion 1, a GCC is just outsourcing. Illusion 2, location is the hard decision. Illusion 3, tech startup is the hardest part. Illusion 4, you can govern it remotely. Illusion 5, month 1 to 6 are the hardest. Let us take each one of them apart. A GCC is just outsourcing, is what I had mentioned as illusion 1. And this is the illusion that creates what I call the governance vacuum. The single most common reason why GCCs fail in the first 12 months. Here is the distinction that matters. With outsourcing, the vendor owns the talent, the process, and the risk. If something breaks, they fix it. If quality drops, you call the account manager. If the team turns over, there is their problem to solve. With GCC, you own everything: the talent, the process, the culture, the performance, the attrition, the knowledge transfer, and of course, including the failure. The problem is that most leadership teams enter a GCC setup with a outsourcing mindset. They expect the operations to manage itself once it is standing. They expect the team to understand context that was never explained to them. They expect quality without having defined what quality means. And when it does not work, they are genuinely surprised. The fix is straightforward, even if it's not easy. Treat a GCC like you are opening a new division of your business, because that is exactly what you are doing. Give it the governance of a division, give it the leadership investment of a division, give it the cultural attention of a division. The cost arbitrage is a bonus. The division is the commitment. Illusion 2, location is a hard decision. And I understand why people think this. There are entire consulting practices built around helping companies choose between a Bangalore and a Hyderabad, between a Manila and a Warsaw and a Krakow. It feels like a weighty, consequential, multi month analysis. Here's the truth: a location is actually a 4-week decision. Cost arbitrage, talent density, time zone alignment, language capability, regulatory environment. You can model all of that. It's complex data, I agree, but it is available data. It has a right answer, or at least a clarity which comes over a period of time, and it comes within 4 weeks. And that's a clearly better answer. And you can get there in 4 weeks with the right framework. What you should be spending months on is not location, it's in governance design, it's in your talent strategy, it is your talent knowledge transfer plan, it is your quality framework where you should be spending your time. These are the decisions that determine whether the GCC delivers, and they are the ones that get compressed because location consumed all the oxygen in the room. Pick your location with rigor, then move on quickly. The real work is much ahead of it. The third illusion: tech setup is the hard part. I have a particular affection for this illusion because it produces a very specific and very predictable pattern. IT gets the GCC online in 6 weeks. Laptops provisioned, VPNs configured, systems connected, collaboration tools deployed. It is genuinely impressive. The team does a good job, leadership celebrates, and then the operations stall for 6 months. Not impressive at all. Technology is the infrastructure. It is necessary, but it is not the hard part. The hard part is the operating model that runs on the top of the technology. It is the process documentation that tells the new team how to do the part, not just that the work needs doing. It is the quality framework that defines what goods look like before the team starts. It is the escalation path that tells someone in a different time zone what to do when something unexpected happens. Tech setup has a project plan and a go live date. Operating model readiness does not. And that asymmetry, where the infrastructure gets meticulous attention and the operation layer gets improvised, it's exactly why GCCs that go live on time still take 12 months to perform. The hard part was never the tech. The hard part is what runs on top of it. Illusion 4. You can govern it remotely. And I want to be fair here. The illusion has real logic behind it. You have Zoom, you have dashboards, you have weekly calls, and you have people who have been running remote teams for years. Why would a GCC be any different? Famous last words. By month 3 of remote only governance, the pattern is almost always the same. Quality starts to drift in ways that's hard to articulate on a call. SLAs get missed, but the root cause is elusive from 5,000 miles away. The team is working hard but making decisions based on incomplete context. And HQ is increasingly frustrated with results that nobody can quite explain. The reason is simple. No on the ground leader means no accountability. In a remote governance model, when decision needs to be made, everyone differs. They differ to HQ, who differs back because they do not have the local context and nothing gets decided. This is not a failure of individual capability, it is a structural failure. A GCC needs a single senior on site leader with real authority, not a coordinator, not a middle manager, a leader with full P&L responsibility, hiring authority, and the mandate to make decisions independently. Someone who can walk the floor, read the culture, and intervene before a small problem becomes an entrenched one. Zoom is a communication tool. It is not a governance model, and the two should never be confused. That's what I tell all my clients. And now for the illusion that is the most dangerous, precisely because it is the most plausible. Illusion number 5. Month 1 to 6 are the hardest. Month 1 to 6 are exciting. There is momentum, the team is motivated, leadership is engaged, early wins are celebrated, processes are running, quality is pretty good. Everyone congratulates themselves on having set this up well. And honestly, it was set up well. The first 6 months usually are. The real problem surfaces in months 6 to 18. Here is what happens. The original champions, the people who built the GCC, who knew the context, who carried the institutional knowledge from the HQ side, they move on. They get promoted, they change roles, they leave the company. It's a perfect normal organizational dynamic. Except that in a GCC context, it is devastating. Because when the champions move on, the knowledge transfer that was implicit, the I will just ask Sarah Or let me loop in James. That evaporates. The GCC team was never given the knowledge formally. They relied on relationships, and the relationships have changed. And so the refrain begins, quality quietly at first, then loudly. Why does the GCC not understand our business? It's a question that sounds like a performance problem. It is actually a knowledge architecture problem, and it was entirely preventable. The fix is to build knowledge transfer and champion succession planning into the GCC design right from day one, not as an afterthought, as a core structural commitment. And so now you know the illusions. Let us now talk about what to do instead. Here are 7 decisions that separate GCCs that perform and others that stall. These are not incremental best practices. These are foundational choices, the kind when getting it wrong in months, even month one, can cost you a year to recover. Let me take you through each one of them. Decision 1, location. And as I said earlier, this is a 4-week decision, not a 4-month one. The rule: single country first, always. And this is something that I insist with all my clients. Don't even think of a multi-year, multi-country deployment, which can happen in 3 years to happen right now. You need to concentrate on only one country. Multi-country GCCs are a year 3 or a year 4 conversation. In year 1, you need concentration, not distribution. Concentration is what allows you to build culture, governance, and institutional knowledge. Distribution at the start dilutes all three. When you model locations, model total cost of seat, not just salary. Salary is the headline, infrastructure, real estate, attrition cost, management overhead, compliance, and currency exposure are the reality. The difference between the headline and the true cost is often 25 to 35%. Model both. Political stability and currency risk are not soft consideration, especially in today's environment. These are financial ones. A location that saves 40% in year 1 but has 20% currency volatility in year 3 is a very different investment than the spreadsheet suggests. Model both, agree with your leadership team before you sign on anything. Decision 2, risk architecture. And this is the decision that catches the most companies by surprise, because it feels like it has come later. It does not. It's a day one decision. Involve your CFO in the tax optimization before you sign the leases, not after. Because your location choice, the entire structure, the entity structure, the transfer pricing model, the IP, ownership arrangements locks into your cost structure for 3 years minimum, if not more. Unwinding a suboptimal tax structure is expensive, slow, and deeply unsettling. Understand the regulatory environment of your chosen location. Labor Day is anytime more costly at a end of the year rather than understanding the labor laws right on day one. data sovereignty requirements, employment contract terms. These are not HR considerations. These are operational constraints that define how you can run and scale the GCC. The best GCC leaders I worked with treat risk architecture as co-equal decision with location, not a downstream one. It saves years of structural correction. Decision 3, hiring wave decision. And I want to spend uh, a moment on this because it runs counter to the instinct that most leadership teams bring to a GCC build. The instinct is to hire fast. You have got headcount approval, you have got a timeline, you have got a board expectation about when the GCC will be operational. The pressure is palpable, the pressure is to fill seats. The reality is that wave 1, your first 30 hires, are your GCC's cultural founders. They are not just early employees, they are the people who will set the behavioral norms, the performance expectation, and the cultural DNA of everything that follows. The team you hire in wave 2 and wave 3 will largely become of what wave 1 modeled for them. So hire wave 1 slowly, very slowly. Takes twice as long as feels comfortable. Be ruthlessly selective, not just on technical competence, on values alignment, on communication quality, on intellectual curiosity, on the ability to operate with ambiguity. These are the people who will define your GCC for years. Hire slow, train fast. That is the reason that builds GCCs that last for years. The corollary into hiring slow is investing heavily on training from day one. And I mean structured, documented, deliberate training. Not sit next to Sarah and she will show you the ropes. The best GCC leaders I've worked with build a 90-day onboarding program that covers not just processes and tools but business context. Why does this work matter? Who does it serve? What does good look like and why? What are the decisions this team is empowered to make independently? The last point, clarity on decision authority, is what separates a team that performs confidently from a team that differs endlessly. When people know what they own it. When they do not, they wait. And waiting at scale is very expensive. Hire slow, train fast. It is not just a mantra, it's a structural investment that pays compound returns for you. Governance and accountability. And I'm going to say something that seems obvious, but it is violated in the majority of the GCC setups I've encountered. You need a single senior on-site GCC head with real PLN authority, not a coordinator, not a liaison, not a senior manager who reports to somebody in London via weekly calls. A leader. This person needs to be empowered to hire, to fire, to make quality decisions, to resolve escalations, and to represent the GCC's interest with genuine authority. If every decision requires HQ sign off, you have not built a GCC. You have built an expensive satellite office. The second requirement is written decision rights. Who decides what? Documented, distributed, and understood. Not a vague, grassy matrix that nobody reads. A clear operational document that answers the question your team can actually ask. Can I approve this? Do I need to escalate this, or who owns this? I will say this plainly as I can. Governance vacuum is the number one preventable GCC failure. It is not talent, it is not technology, it is not location. When GCCs fail in the first year, the root cause is the overwhelmingly majority of the cases traces back to a leadership and governance gap that was visible at setup and went unaddressed. Feel the gap before you feel the seeds. Quality framework from day one. Define good before you hire. That is the principle. And it sounds straightforward until you realize how rarely it is done. Most GCCs start with a general expectation of quality and refine it as they go. The problem is that by month 3, the team has already internalized whatever standards were modeled in month 1. By month 6, the culture around quality is set. Retrofitting a quality framework onto an established team costs 6 months of lost value and a significant amount of friction to accomplish what would have taken 2 weeks of design upfront. Before your first hire, write down what goods looks like, SLAs, your accuracy rates, turnaround standards, error classification, escalation thresholds. They should be in writing, shared with the team from day one, and built into the training program. Quality is not a performance conversation, it's a design conversation. Have it before the team exits, not after it begins underperforming. Decision 7, transition risk and rollback. And I want to acknowledge that this particular point, whenever I speak to my client, always make them uncomfortable. Nobody wants a plan for failure when there is so much excitement of building something new. That's a reality. But what I said is also again a reality. But here's the reframe. A rollback plan is not defeatism, it is professionalism. The most experienced GCC leaders I know all have one. Not because they expect us to use it, because having it changes how they make decisions. When you know your exit options, you are less likely to double down on the structure that is not working. You are less likely to let sunk cost bias prevent a strategic correction. And the question now, what if the GCC struggles on year 3? What does a responsible, structured wind down or restructure looks like? What are the trigger conditions? What would be my contractual obligations? And what is the people plan? And the second dimension of this decision is evolution planning. GCCs almost always evolve significantly from the original design. The functions change, the scope changes, the organization relationship with HQ changes. Leaders who plan for this evolution, who build flexibility into the structure, who revisit the governance model annually, end up with GCCs that adapt. Leaders who do not end up managing a structure that no longer fits the business it was built to serve. Plan for success, plan for evolution, and have a plan for a scenario where the world changes faster than the model. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not pessimism. That, for me, is leadership. And this is the message that I tell all my clients whenever we have a talk of GCC setup. We have covered a lot of ground. 5 illusions, 7 decisions. 2 years that you know now how to save. But let me give you the summary in just 3 lines. Build it like a business division. not like a business contract or a vendor contract. The mindset you bring into the setup determines everything that follows. If you're building a division with a real leader, real governance, real culture, and real accountability, you will make the right decision along the way. If you're managing a contract, you will manage it like a contract and it will perform just like one. Govern year one from the ground, not via a Zoom dashboard. Year one is when the culture is set, processes are established, and leadership credibility is built. A culture cannot be built on a screen. And on the ground leader with real authority who can walk the floor, make fast decisions, and read the room, that is a non negotiable investment on year one. Everything else is optimization. The first 90 days decide the culture that survive year 3. Your first hires set the tone. Your first decision sets the norm. Your first quality standard sets the bar. Everything that follows reinforces or degrades what was established in the first 90 days. This is not a metaphor. It is an observable pattern in every GCCs I have been involved with. Invest in the 90 days. The ROI is measured in years. So, this brings us to the end of today's episode, the GCC illusion. The promise is real, the savings are real, the talent advantage is real, the 24/7 capability is real. I'm not here to tell you not to build a GCC. I'm here to tell you the gap between the promise and the reality is not random. It is structural. It is 5 specific illusions and 7 specific decisions. And now you know both. 80% of GCCs hit serious problems on year 1. You now have the framework to be in the 20% that do not. If you are planning a GCC, use the 7 decisions as your design checklist. If you are a mid setup, use the 5 illusions as a diagnostic. Honestly, of course. If you are trying to rescue a GCC that has stalled, start with governance. It is almost always there. If this was useful, and I hope it was, the most valuable thing you can do right now is to share this with someone who is about to make one of these decisions. Connect with me for discussing and chatting out the fail-safe path. The illusions are most dangerous before the build begins. Forward this to the CEO, the board member, or the transformation lead who needs to hear it. And as always, I tell you, subscribe to the channel if you want more thinking like this. We publish every week leadership, performance architecture, operating model design, and the decisions that separate the businesses that scale from the ones that stall. You will find the links to connect with us, our website and our LinkedIn page right here on this slide. Reach out if you want to talk through a specific GCC challenge. We work with mid-market businesses on exactly this kind of decisions. And I'm always happy to have a direct conversation. I'm Raja Mukherjee. Thank you for watching episode number 28. Goodbye for now. Take care, stay safe, and we'll meet next week.